Good morning. It's Monday, December 28th, and it's about 4:30 in the morning. And I was just thinking. Yesterday I did some videos on a movie that I saw called Concussion. It featured Will Smith, the actor. He played a Nigerian man. He did autopsies. He was highly talented. The character had about maybe 7 different educational degrees from well-known institutions in the United States. I asked myself this morning, further thought about the 2 videos that I did yesterday. What was Concussion, the movie, really about? It featured the Nigerian man, and he was almost perfect. He had morality. Some people would say arrogant, and that he's too smart for his own good. On the surface, it seemed very positive. Why in the movie, even from the very beginning, it overemphasized, like he one part of the movie in the beginning, he is an expert witness, and he's telling the jury what his credentials are. And he's going on and on. And you almost feel a little irritated with him. Another scene, they show him doing an autopsy. Before every autopsy, he would have his hand on the person's body, and he would speak to the corpse and say, okay, tell me what's wrong, what happened to you. We want to discover what killed you. I thought that was very profound. But like any typical American movie, he had a white counterpart that worked with him, and how all the static about him, the white fellow co-worker didn't like him talking to the body. This Nigerian doctor would also, the instruments used after each autopsy, he would request it to be thrown out. Next thing you know, he's at like a reprimand meeting. The white boss was threatening to have him fired because of how he came across, how he ruffled the feathers of the white co-worker. And one retort to his white manager or boss was, if you had a mother and I had to do an autopsy, would you want me to use the same instruments of a mass killer, the instrument that was used on a mass killer's autopsy, and use it on your mother? Actually, the white guy, his boss, said that he would let him use it. But I think he was just trying to be hard-nosed. It showed a lot of insight about white America and America as a whole, all of its people who live on this country, in this country I should say. It showed black people who work within the football industry, work behind the scenes, and how disconnected the black Americans were to this Nigerian man. And in one scene actually, he was a former football player, a very big, very dark-skinned black male. He's wearing a beautiful suit, and he approaches the doctor. I think it was an outside scene, and he starts, I think, pushing him and getting in the doctor's face. Very hostile, and this was because this doctor had published medical findings that the contact sport, where there's head collision, can later on develop symptoms like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, all these symptoms and diseases. And even though he was very systematic, logical, very organized, and seemed that the pieces all seemed to fit, yet he was treated horribly, and horribly by some of the blacks in the movie. Well, this one particular black. And then had a black person, youngish, very young, like in the 20s. He worked behind the scenes. He wasn't a player. At least I assume he's wearing a suit and he's working in the office. He seemed like maybe a liaison between the players and the administration. And he seemed like it was all like a joke and cockiness, and he just seemed happy. Look at me, I have a suit on, I'm behind the scenes, and I'm someone important. But he was very disconnected about about any of the football players. He wanted to keep his. He wanted to keep the system going. And even though his black counterpart from Nigeria, with all the love in his heart, superior education than most Americans, and here they verbally attacked him. He was forced to leave the state because the stress of the institution of football, the managers and all that, put so much stress on his family. He was just starting out, he just got married, his wife is pregnant, and the wife gets the baby dies, mother was pregnant, and I think she was going into labor or something, and then it was discovered the baby's heart had stopped beating. You just assumed that it was the stress of he used to get harassing phone calls throughout the night, and it took its toll. This is really something. You have what's going on now in the United States, the Black Lives Matter. But here in this picture about football players, and a big percentage of professional football players are black men. and how we don't care. And you just have like a few of us in promising careers. And here their fellow former footballer is in despair. You have all these resources. Could you imagine if the people of football get together and have something and build up something for themselves that when they get older, but everybody wings it. They have their heyday, they have their glory. It's not a long season. You can't play that game forever. And then what? You're begging, you're in drugs, etc. Whether you're white, black, you have to be each other's neighbor. You have to keep your eyes open. Yeah, it is hard. Sometimes you see yourself in others. You see other people struggling like you were or like you are. And we don't want to see ourselves. I know I don't want to see myself either. But I realize I have to face myself and others. The story of the movie Concussion reminds me of an incident that happened to me. I was really stressed out. This could have even been 7 years ago. And I went to the doctors. I had woken up in the middle of the night. I think my heart was racing. And I really wasn't feeling well. I thought something was wrong with my heart. And in short, I asked to talk to a counselor. And I specified a black person to talk to. My reason for that, I felt alone, and I wanted to talk to someone that I felt would have sensitivity to me. Because a lot of what was going on was about race and racism and the struggles that certain demographics have in the United States. I don't think if I had, let's say, if I were white, or let's say a new immigrant from East Asia or South Asia, or let's say if I'm Jewish or Spanish speaking, and requested someone of that background, I don't think the request would be treated the same way, and I think the person would probably get helped. When I made the request, it initially was, well, we don't have them. But in this case, I had to say, like, in the triage, the person said, she was Filipino, and she says to me, look, like off the record, for you to get to see somebody, you have to say, certain key words. And if you don't, you're not going to see anyone. But if you're saying, look, I feel depressed, if you use the term depressed, then we'll be able to have you see someone. If not, we can't do anything for you. So with that info, and she really was helping, she can only do what she is instructed to do, and I respect that. I eventually got to see this black woman. She was the, what do you call it, psychiatric nurse. She needs psychiatry. She was very cold as ice. She seemed offended at my presence, and I tried to talk to her in her office. She refused to speak. She never mentioned one word to me. But you know who did help me? A white Christian woman. She just spoke very few words, but she spoke from the heart. I just a couple of minutes, hardly anything, maybe 5 minutes, if even that. I started to feel better. They gave me something for the pain. And I just took a little nap. It made me go to sleep. It was to relax me a little bit. Just 15 minutes I needed. Woke up after 15 minutes and felt like a new person. She helped me out. What's going on? We are becoming so detached from one another, black people. And we're forced to go outside of our own. Just like the movie Concussion. American blacks weren't helping each other. But here, an outsider, a man from Nigeria, was instrumental. Yes, he's a black person, but the fact that he still is an outsider, because he's not from the U.S. We need to start connecting from the heart. For the Black Lives Matter movement to be effective, you have to have a soul. They say that we have soul music, but I greatly see that that is not true anymore. You can't have soul music without soul. It's not how good you can dance, it's what's in your heart. We're being foolish as a people. Let's start tapping into our own heart. You can try to do that through meditation, because your religion or your current spirituality is lacking. You are killing yourself by this detachment. Let us become our real spiritual self and overcome these adversities. But it starts within. Each one of us, regardless of your race, has to tap into our heart and elevate from there. Then, no matter what the enemy throws at you, no matter what darts they throw at you, and just like in the movie Concussion, there were evil men throwing their darts at this Nigerian. He stood his ground. He never changed his ethics, this Nigerian man. And then when it backfires on the system, because the last football player that they mentioned in the movie commits suicide, leaves a note telling the people who find him that he knows that there's something wrong and that that Nigerian man was correct about his findings. And he wanted to donate his brain for research so that the rest of the football players can get help. And when the letter, I guess, got out, all poo-poo broke loose. And the people who were initially throwing the darts, now they were under scrutiny, because now they just couldn't hide it. The shame now. First, the shame was put on the Nigerian doctor and the other football players. Shame and disgrace. Those were innocent men who died. The system failed them. And these rich men who were throwing the darts, now it's turned around. So let us get our act together as a human people, one force of love. Let us get it together. I say this in love also. I thank you for listening. Please feel free to comment below, to share my video with friends and family. It's free to subscribe, and to please give me the thumbs up. Bye-bye, guys.